Excited to be welcoming Greta Van Fleet back to Loudwire Nights. Joining us this evening is Josh and Sam Kiszka. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. It's been a minute.
It's great to be here.
It's been a moment. It has been a moment. How have you been?
I've been excellent, but word on the street is that you guys are not going to be in like the Christmas capital of the world, your hometown of Frankenmuth, Michigan on Christmas. Is this so?
Oh my goodness.
It's sad. It's sad. We don't travel much these days. We're kind of hermits.
Not so much. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Well,
how dare you? What are you loving most about Nashville though?
I think it's everything. It's the wonderful local spirit. It's the beautiful independent places to eat here, the beautiful art scene, the beautiful people. So I think altogether it's a moment happening in time right now. And we will only be able to recognize that moment when 20 years have elapsed.
You think so? I mean, we can theorize right now.
We can theorize anything.
It's really strange, people end up at a certain place for certain reasons. I think it's all good if your natural inclination is to follow what feels right. And so this is where we are right now. It's been great, but we do miss, Frankenmuth a little bit, from time to time. So it would be nice for all of this pandemic insanity to lift at some point so that we could, have our Christmas back in Christmas Wonderland.
And one day we're going to put on a huge show there.
I'm sure they love it.
Local band show. That's going to be wonderful.
Well,
out of control.
It's going to look like a circus. We're going to, have trapeze elves and maybe a cross-dressing Santa or something like that.
Forward thinking.
What was that? It's the director of the FBI. What's his name? Hoover.
Are you talking about J. Edgar Hoover?
We're going to have the director of the director of the FBI, right?
Okay.
Yeah, we're on a tangent.
Okay.
Let's reel this back in. Okay. So Greta Van Fleet, all of you, every single one of you, looked and sounded so darn good earlier this month on Stephen Colbert. What have you guys learned about commanding the stage, as well as your voice and instrument in a live setting now that you've performed, I don't know, like a gazillion shows over the last few years, the forever sold out Greta Van Fleet shows?
Well, I think for the most part, just having the hindsight to look back on things and understand, at least try just a little bit more to understand what is happening when we're on stage and what that actually is, because it lives so much in a realm that isn't really tangible. So I think seeing ourselves enough and how we move and how we interact and what the music is doing, going up there with the confidence and portraying the music in a strong way. I think that we've had so much experience up to this point. It's kind of been, I hate to call this whole pandemic or even draw any kind of hope out of it, because there's so many people that are so desolate without, any help. But for us, we found some kind of comfort in the fact that we can withdraw from this society that is kind of ever present, that we've never really experienced, and we've never been at home in any way. So I think that having that extra perspective is what kind of really does it, and having the time to reflect.
Yeah. Such a great
It's
performance.
actually kind of a meditation, I think.
Yeah.
You guys look also very unified. Like, are you going to continue coordinating the look on stage moving forward? I don't know if you've ever looked that cohesive.
No.
I mean, people were still talking about Josh's outfit, of course. That goes without saying. But, that's a solid no.
I'm doing a hair flip right now.
I think what we were really trying to portray there is the fact that it's a time of rebirth. It's a time to...
we wanted an empty canvas, and we wanted to be able to be in a transformable space. You give people the kind of opportunity to see something a little more straightforward, and we wanted to personify unification a little bit.
And we really are moving into a new world at this point. A lot of people associate the year with the new world, but I'm not exactly sure that's how it works. But it's definitely moving into a new way to look at what society is after this, with the vaccine coming out and with administration changing all over.
And the track that we're performing, My Way Soon, that was written before all of this pandemic, which was it kind of took birth in the studio space, which generally happens in the recording of the albums that we put together. It's sort of an amalgamation of things that we've previously written, and we pull off the shelf, dust them off, and reevaluate things that just happened. And that really just happened, and it was like the first person writing in that. I've never really done that, but it was very personal. It was kind of a reflection of our experiences on the road and traveling, and now that's not happening. So I think what the song does now for everyone is it allows us to remember what the world was like, or what it is now, and how we can't go out like that and really carpe diem and seize the day. But then there's going to be tomorrow, I think. There's going to be the light at the end of the tunnel. There's going to be the new day. That's kind of then going to be something totally different once we get to it. We're going to have a sort of a fresh take on all of those, the ability to travel, the ability to explore our lives, our own inclinations, and meet people that shape our world. And those are things that really should be considered, and that's what the song is. It's also an invitation to do that. So that's what's, I think, hopefully around the corner.
Hopefully. Let's continue with the topic of My Way Soon. We've been playing it on Loudwire nights, and obviously it's about, you meeting new people, new places. The band has been exposed to so much. Needless to say that when you go from Population 5,000 to World Travelers, things change within yourself. You've spoken on that. Add fame, money, and idolization to the mix, and that can change you in unwanted ways. So what is something about yourselves, that you never want to lose in the shuffle of your new reality, like outside of music, just as humans?
Honesty.
Love it.
I'd rather die than one day wake up and realize that I'm some kind of plastic person, and that industry has
morphed you into
a
horror robot.
A horror robot of some sort. I just that's not something that I would ever do. It's just not, so I think that would be my answer.
I think also there's this certain beauty that a child has.
Yeah.
And every day you grow up, you kind of lose that if you're not aware to what's happening.
Raw innocence.
It's raw innocence, and it's pure beauty, and it's seeing the world in all these different ways. And you get put into this society, you get kind of
and then
molded.
Then there are these cultural conditioned prejudices that all of a sudden come into play, and that kind of then erases some of that trueness. That's the fundamental thing that is the beauty of artistic creation, which is honesty and originality, identity. Those things, those are really important.
And conversely, what's been the biggest change you've seen within yourself that's been very welcome?
Changes within ourselves that have been very welcome.
It's interesting to actually consider the previous question, the former, and now to consider that in relation to that. It's really interesting because I think almost a little more difficult to answer.
Yeah, it is. But I think that what this has given us an opportunity to do is slow down and think and be in touch with ourselves. And personally, I think that it's kind of been a wonderful moment to hit the brakes, because let's say theoretically no pandemic happened. We're out touring for years and years more, and we never stop. When it does stop, I don't think we would have known how to live on the outside. I don't think we could have lived inside this giant society machine.
Perspective, I think, is really I think you're getting at in the major
absolutely
thing, right? So I think it's just a matter of, I think a good welcome thing is having a wider range of perspective than before. Just sort of growth in culturally and retrospective too, spiritually, all of those
perhaps
things.
Stability as well are one of those elements.
I guess you become more adjusted. You become more comfortable once you've gotten more perspective and you've had this time to process things.
Which is funny because both things are very welcome. I think ancient humans, they traveled. They went from place to place, and that is kind of the innate part of our souls is being meanderers, being these travelers.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, being nomads. And at some point, we got wise and we started digging holes and planting seeds and settling down. And that's also a very wonderful thing, to feel a sense of home.
Yeah.
Like we think of Frankenmuth and the sprawling farm fields of Michigan. There's definitely intrinsic nostalgia there. But once again, perspectives. I think that's all we want to do as who we are, is put ourselves in these situations that maybe we're not so comfortable with and learn a little bit more about ourselves.
And I think that it's my way soon altogether. That's what that is saying, actually. Comfortability is perceived a little bit strangely. Uncomfortability is just as important and just as natural. And so that's the thing. You have to put yourself out into the world and in those circumstances and just be open to it.
God knows you guys have. The second song that we've heard off the band's upcoming sophomore album, titled The Battle at Garden's Gate, which arrives April 16th, by the way, is Age of Machine. Many point to that track when discussing the band's maturing sound. It sounds different. It's still great, but yeah, of course, it definitely sounds different. When was the moment where things just started clicking differently sound-wise or in your head in terms of making music? How does that happen?
Well, I think for the aesthetic of this album, we really had to find the right team to assemble, because we knew that what we were about to do was honestly very daunting sonically. So that is exactly
we had
what
to find people we trusted and knew could achieve the sound we were going for, which is going to be more cinematic. And that's just across the board as far as the album is concerned. But concerning Age of Machine, that was kind of something that was perceived sometime last year in the hills of Tennessee.
Yes.
And we'd isolated ourselves in this cabin, and we were there for maybe 2 weeks, was it? Something like that, maybe even 3. And this was after the release of the previous album, Anthem of the Peaceful Army. So we were kind of starting with a fresh slate, wanted to do something. We were considering all of these things, and we thought, well, this album that we're talking about now, that was in conversation an album we wanted to make in the beginning, but it was a little bit strange. We didn't think that it would have been I don't think we would think that would work as well initially as it would now, after having some kind of ongoing narrative or relationship with all of these people around the world, after all of our travels and having at least played around and being a little better known.
And we get to know these people and how they react to our music and our perspective on things.
Right. So I think there's that relationship is going to help in aiding the understanding of this album, which is a little bit more complex. And I think between the 2 songs released so far off of the album, I think Age of Machine probably in a subtle way embodies more of the feel of the entirety of the album. But each song is really supposed to be its own thing. It's its own mythology. It's its own piece in the whole puzzle that is the story, and the overall story.
Yeah, I think it really kind of came to fruition through our sonic vision, because there's so much to the songwriting that's so important. But once you get to that point, you have to make it sound like it does in your head, which is even more of a daunting task. So it was about putting together the right team, getting ourselves in the right headspace, and getting in the right place for the job. It was a lot of work. We were at it for a long time, and we're honestly still kind of at it, building the visual world that accompanies the songs. Because after we kind of completed it, we did go into it saying, we want this to be very cinematic. We want it to feel widescreen. We want it to feel big.
Silvery,
yes. And it's dark sometimes, and it's very beautiful and light sometimes, and there's many combinations of both, and a lot of the time you can feel that, all of it in the same song. But they all live in different places. All 12 of those little seeds sprouted into something that's very different. And
He's alluding to tracks.
Yes, I
You don't
caught
know
on
that
to
yet.
that. I
You
caught
do
on to
that.
that. I heard that there's a love song on this record, and not to get all TMZ
love
with it.
Love song.
I am wondering though, like you guys never, none of you in the band post any images. I went through all of your Instagrams with a significant other. Is that like a conscious thing that you're just, okay, that part's mine?
We can't love.
We're broken.
It's too hard to love. To answer your question, we just don't find that that's important to the music and the art. So we tend to keep our private lives to ourselves, and it's because it really is about the music. It's about the culture behind the music. It's about
And
the visual representation.
That, and I think the significant others would be pissed if they started, threatening their privacy. It's just a crazy thing to consider. Being some kind of public figure is a really weird thing.
Yes.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, fair. I had to ask though. I know you guys make the music. I had to. Come on, I had to.
Come on.
I know you guys make the music that you want to hear, but what makes you most excited about the masses ingesting the battle at Garden's Gate?
I think we have a lot to say in these times. We have looked at the most unprecedented times we've seen since the 1940s, since World War II, perhaps.
Certainly in our lifetime, right?
This is something huge. This is kind of one of those things that perhaps will define our generation.
Most excited about people to hear this album. Well, I think I'm excited to see how people perceive its. I think literally speaking, the complexities and the literary aspect of the album, beyond the literary context, the sonic aspects, the sonic aesthetics of the album, and the dynamics of that.
Right, and there's a slight malleability to what the music is, and I think that it's very important for people to approach that with an open mind. And I don't even think you're supposed to try to figure out what it means. I think you do know what it means when you hear it to you.
Right.
And we talked about the cinematic aspects of the album. And when you look at a movie, that's what you do. When you go into a theater, you surrender yourself to the picture. You know that some of the effects are effects, but you buy into the story. You surrender yourself to it. I think that's kind of what Sam is saying, that you surrender yourself, or you give yourself to this thing, and you let it go. But I'm not saying that we're pulling any effects here. This is very honest, and it's very personal. And I think when you as an artist feel that way about what you're creating, and that somebody else will feel the same way, and so hopefully it offers something that lifts and intrigues and challenges somebody. And I think it hopefully from maybe a selfish artistic standpoint, hopefully it's something that's frightening and beautiful.
Frightening and beautiful. Okay, we'll wrap on this one. You've been very generous with your time. Thank you. People joke all the time that you guys are really time travelers from the 70s. If there was an era that you could go back to, what would it be? And who would be number one on your list to cross paths with in terms of musicians, or perhaps plot twists you would like to look into the future?
Well, okay, so this can go in very many directions.
You want to go down?
If I could pick any time to be alive,
yes,
I would actually pick right now, because
Yogi.
Because I think that right now, as we were saying earlier, I was kind of trying to say that this is a very important time and we have a lot to say about it. And that's kind of, I hope, a lot of the things that people pull out of the music, and be inspired by that to, create a bigger wave of art and understanding. But I think that's why right now it's so important to be alive, is that when we were kind of coming into the scene, people always said, oh, don't you think that you should have come up in the 70s when all the real rock and roll music was coming to fruition? And for a long time in the teenage years, I thought, yeah, I really resent the time that we live in. I really wish that I could have been a part of that movement. I spoke too soon, because here we are in the most crazy movement in this century and the last century. I think it's a very important. I think it's a very important time to be alive, to represent humankind, and stand up and say, we are all part of this functioning society. We are all one, and we will do our best to understand each other and make peace with each other. And there's a lot to do about it.
And I think music has a lot to say about all of that, and that's, I think, a great deal. The wave we're on and the wave we support, and that, I think, is a hugely appropriate answer.
Let's let you in on a secret, Toni. It's very easy to make music that sounds nice to the ears, but it takes a little bit more to make something that you really believe in and something that you want to travel around the world with. And something you want to hold in the fist of your hand and hold it in front of 100,000 people. So I think that's why right now is so important to be alive. Is we are I think we feel we're kind of representatives of the times in some way or another as artists.
Thank you again. The Battle at Garden's Gate is the name of Greta Van Fleet's upcoming album. It's due out April 16th. We look forward to continuing to watch you all grow, create, and conquer. So Josh, Sam, thank you.
Thank you.